The next morning, Marcus boarded a plane for a business trip to Tokyo. He walked through the airport with his carry-on bag, wearing jeans and a hoodie. When he got to the gate, the agent greeted him warmly. "Good morning, Mr. Wellington. Welcome aboard. We're happy to have you flying with us today." Marcus smiled. "Thank you. I'm happy to be here." He boarded the plane, found his seat, and settled in for the long flight. As the plane took off, Marcus looked out the window at the world below. So much had changed in 2 years. So much still needed to change. But for now, in this moment, Marcus felt hopeful. The fight for equality was never ending. But it was a fight worth having. And Marcus Wellington was just getting started. They agreed to create a passenger advocacy board that would include Marcus and other community leaders. This board would review discrimination complaints and have real power to recommend consequences. The airline also committed to hiring more diverse staff at every level. They set specific goals for increasing the number of people of color in management positions. They partnered with historically black colleges and Hispanic-serving institutions to recruit talent. They made diversity and inclusion a key part of executive performance reviews and compensation. Marcus's Fair Travel Foundation would work with the airline to develop training materials and audit their progress. Every quarter, the airline would publish a transparency report showing how many discrimination complaints they received and how each was handled. "This is a good start," Marcus said as the meeting wrapped up. "But we're going to hold you accountable. If you don't follow through on these commitments, we'll go public with that too." "I understand," Richard said, "and I appreciate it. We need that accountability. We've proven we won't do it on our own." Over the next 3 months, the airline began implementing the changes. They brought in expert trainers to teach employees about unconscious bias, cultural sensitivity, and respectful customer service. The training wasn't just PowerPoint presentations. It involved role-playing exercises, real stories from passengers who had experienced discrimination, and honest discussions about prejudice. Some employees resisted. They complained that the training was too political or unnecessary. But most embraced it. Many flight attendants and gate agents admitted they had witnessed discrimination, but hadn't known how to address it. The training gave them tools and confidence to speak up. The airline also established a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination. Any employee with a proven pattern of discriminatory behavior would be terminated. No more warnings. No more second chances. The message was clear. Treat all passengers with respect or find another job. News of the airline's reforms spread throughout the industry. Other airlines watched closely. Some criticized the changes as too extreme, but others recognized an opportunity. They didn't want to be the next airline caught in a discrimination scandal. 3 major airlines announced they would implement similar policies within 6 months. Marcus appeared on national television to discuss the changes. The interviewer asked him if he thought the airline's reforms were sincere or just public relations. "Time will tell," Marcus said honestly, "but I'm cautiously optimistic. They're doing things I've never seen an airline do before. They're being transparent. They're listening to the communities they've harmed. If they follow through, this could be a model for the entire industry." The interviewer also asked about Patricia Hendricks. "She sent me a letter apologizing," Marcus revealed. "It seemed genuine. But individual apology isn't enough. What matters is systemic change. Patricia was part of a system that allowed her behavior. Fixing that system is more important than punishing one person." Marcus's Fair Travel Foundation continued to grow. By the end of the first year, they had documented over 5,000 stories of travel discrimination. They had helped 50 passengers file lawsuits against airlines and hotels. They had published a comprehensive report on discrimination in the travel industry that was used by lawmakers to draft new regulations. The foundation also established scholarships for students of color who wanted to work in aviation, hospitality, and tourism. Marcus believed that changing the industry from the inside was just as important as changing policies. If more people of color held positions of power in these companies, discrimination would be harder to ignore. 1 year after the incident at Gate 47, Marcus returned to that same airport. The airline had invited him to speak at an event celebrating their progress. He stood at a podium near the gate where everything had happened. Employees, passengers, and media representatives filled the area. Richard Thompson introduced Marcus. "A year ago, we failed Mr. Wellington and countless other passengers. We allowed discrimination to flourish in our company because we weren't paying attention. Mr. Wellington could have sued us into oblivion. Instead, he challenged us to be better. He worked with us to create real change. Today, I'm proud to say we're a better airline because of him. Marcus took the microphone. Thank you, Richard. A year ago, I stood at this gate feeling frustrated and humiliated. I never imagined that moment would lead to all of this. But I'm grateful it did. Not for me, but for everyone who will have a better experience because we decided to speak up and demand change. He looked around at the faces in the crowd. Change is possible. It's not easy. It's not quick. It requires honesty, accountability, and sustained effort. But it's possible. This airline has made real progress. They're not perfect. No company is. But they're trying. They're listening. They're changing. That's all we can ask. Marcus paused and smiled. And I'm pleased to announce that after a year of not flying with this airline, I'm actually booked on a flight next week. I'm giving them another chance. Because that's what progress is about. Making mistakes, learning from them, and doing better. The crowd applauded. Camera flashes went off. Marcus saw Angela Harris in the audience, smiling with tears in her eyes. He saw airline employees who had gone through the bias training and taken it seriously. He saw young people of color who wanted to work in aviation and now believed they could. After the event, Marcus walked through the airport terminal. He passed families rushing to catch flights, business travelers typing on laptops, flight attendants pulling their rolling suitcases. The everyday chaos of travel continued around him, but he noticed something different. At one gate, he saw a black family in first class being greeted warmly by a flight attendant. At another gate, a Muslim woman in a hijab was being helped with her bags by a gate agent who chatted with her like they were old friends. Small moments. Simple kindness. The way it should always be. Marcus knew the work wasn't finished. Discrimination still existed in the travel industry. It existed everywhere, but things were better than they had been a year ago. And they would keep getting better as long as people kept fighting for change. 6 months later, Marcus published a book about his experience. He called it Flying While Black: One Incident, 1,000 Stories. The book detailed what happened at Gate 47, but it also included stories from hundreds of other travelers who had experienced discrimination. It discussed the psychology of bias, the history of discrimination in transportation, and practical steps companies could take to create more inclusive environments. The book became a bestseller. It was taught in business schools as a case study in corporate responsibility and crisis management. It sparked conversations in living rooms, boardrooms, and classrooms across the country. People who had never thought about travel discrimination before began to see it everywhere. Marcus used the proceeds from the book to expand his Fair Travel Foundation. They opened offices in 5 cities and hired full-time staff to investigate discrimination complaints. They partnered with universities to research bias in the travel industry. They trained thousands of employees at hotels, airlines, and rental car companies. 2 years after the incident, Marcus received an award from a civil rights organization. As he accepted the award, he thought about everything that had happened since that day at Gate 47. He thought about Patricia Hendricks, who had sent him 3 more letters over the years, each one showing more growth and understanding. He thought about Richard Thompson, who had become a genuine ally in the fight against discrimination. He thought about Angela Harris, who was now speaking at conferences about her experience and helping other victims. But mostly, Marcus thought about all the people who would never experience what he experienced, the travelers who would be treated with respect and dignity, regardless of how they looked. The children of color who would grow up traveling without fear. The employees who would speak up when they saw discrimination because they knew their voices mattered. What happened to me at Gate 47 was painful, Marcus said in his acceptance speech. It was humiliating. It was wrong. But it was also a gift in disguise. It gave me a platform to speak about issues that had been ignored for too long. It gave me an opportunity to create change that will outlast my lifetime. Sometimes the worst moments in our lives become the catalyst for the most important work we'll ever do. Marcus looked out at the audience. He saw faces of every color, age, and background. He saw people who had experienced discrimination and people who had witnessed it. He saw allies who wanted to help and activists who had been fighting for years. He saw the next generation of leaders who would continue this work long after he was gone. We have more work to do, Marcus concluded. We always will. But tonight I want to celebrate how far we've come. I want to honor everyone who shared their stories. everyone who demanded better, everyone who refused to accept discrimination as normal. You are the real heroes. You are the ones creating change. Thank you. As Marcus left the stage, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not because the fight was over, but because he knew he had used his pain for purpose. He had turned a moment of discrimination into a movement for justice. He had taken his privilege and platform and used them to amplify voices that had been silenced for too long. But the reporter wasn't done. Ms. Hendricks, do you think it's possible that unconscious bias affected your judgment that day? Patricia looked uncomfortable. I don't think so. I treat all passengers the same. Even though 7 different passengers have filed complaints about your treatment of them, and all 7 were people of color. Patricia's face went red. I don't know what you're talking about. There weren't 7 complaints. Donald tried to interrupt, but the reporter kept talking. The airline's investigation found 7 complaints. Not 3, 7, all from passengers of color. How do you explain that pattern? Patricia stood up abruptly. This interview is over. You people are attacking me without knowing the facts. She walked away from the podium. Donald followed her, trying to calm her down. The press conference fell apart. Later that evening, videos of Patricia's press conference went viral for all the wrong reasons. Her defensive attitude, her refusal to acknowledge any wrongdoing, and her claim that she treated everyone the same despite evidence to the contrary made people even angrier. Many viewers felt she showed no real remorse or understanding of what she had done wrong. Marcus watched Patricia's press conference from his office. His assistant Jennifer sat with him. When it ended, Jennifer shook her head. She still doesn't get it. No, she doesn't, Marcus agreed. And maybe she never will. Some people can't see their own bias even when it's pointed out to them. Do you think the airline investigation will change anything? Jennifer asked. Marcus thought about it. I think it depends on whether they're willing to look at their whole system, not just one flight attendant. Patricia was part of a bigger problem. She's not the disease. She's a symptom. The next day, Marcus received a call from Richard Thompson, the airline CEO. They had been trading messages through lawyers and assistants for weeks. Now Richard wanted to speak directly. Mr. Wellington, thank you for taking my call, Richard said. I've been reviewing the findings of our internal investigation. I owe you an apology, a real one, not a corporate statement written by lawyers. I'm listening, Marcus said. You were right about everything, Richard continued. Patricia Hendricks had multiple complaints that we ignored. We have other employees with similar patterns that we overlooked. Our training was inadequate. Our complaint system was broken. We failed you and many other passengers. What are you going to do about it? Marcus asked. We want to meet with you, Richard said. Not just me. Our entire leadership team. We want to bring in civil rights experts, diversity consultants, and most importantly, we want to hear from other passengers who have experienced discrimination. We want to learn. We want to change. But we need your help. Marcus was quiet for a moment. He had been angry at the airline for weeks. Part of him wanted to keep fighting them publicly, but another part of him recognized an opportunity. If the airline was truly willing to change, he could help make that change meaningful and lasting. I'll meet with you, Marcus said finally, but I have conditions. The meeting has to include leaders from civil rights organizations. It has to include passengers who have complained about discrimination, and everything we discuss has to become public policy, not private promises. Agreed, Richard said without hesitation. Whatever you need. And one more thing, Marcus added. I want you to commit to hiring more diverse staff at all levels. Not just flight attendants. Gate agents, supervisors, managers, executives, people who understand discrimination because they've experienced it. Consider it done, Richard said. When can we meet? They scheduled a meeting for 2 weeks later at a neutral location. Richard would bring his leadership team. Marcus would bring civil rights leaders, diversity experts, and 3 passengers who had filed discrimination complaints against the airline. The goal was to develop a comprehensive action plan. In the meantime, Marcus's Fair Travel Foundation was growing quickly. Thousands of people had submitted stories of discrimination they experienced while traveling. The foundation documented each story carefully. Some were heartbreaking. A Muslim woman forced to remove her hijab, a disabled traveler denied boarding assistance, an elderly Asian man accused of not understanding English even though he had lived in America for 50 years. Marcus hired a team to organize the stories and analyze them for patterns. They found that certain demographics were targeted more often. Black travelers and Middle Eastern travelers faced the highest rates of discrimination. But nobody was immune. Every race, religion, and nationality had experienced unfair treatment at some point. The Foundation also set up a legal helpline. Passengers who felt they had been discriminated against could call and get free legal advice. If their case was strong, the Foundation would provide a lawyer. Several lawsuits were already in progress against various airlines and transportation companies. Marcus knew that changing an entire industry would take years, maybe decades, but he was committed to the fight. Every story he read, every victim he spoke with reminded him why this mattered. One evening, Marcus received a handwritten letter at his office. It was from Patricia Hendricks. He almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of him. He opened the envelope and pulled out 2 pages of neat handwriting. "Dear Mr. Wellington," the letter began, "I know you have no reason to read this or care what I have to say, but I need to write it anyway, more for myself than for you. I've spent the past month thinking about what happened at Gate 47. At first, I was defensive. I was angry. I felt like I was being unfairly attacked. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized something difficult. You were right. I was wrong." Marcus continued reading Patricia's letter. His coffee sat untouched on his desk as he absorbed her words. "I grew up in a small town where almost everyone looked like me," Patricia wrote. "I never thought of myself as prejudiced. I had black friends in school. I voted for Barack Obama. I thought that meant I couldn't be racist. But I'm learning that racism isn't always about hatred. Sometimes it's about assumptions we don't even realize we're making. When I saw you that day at the gate, I made assumptions. I saw your hoodie and your casual clothes, and something in my brain said, this doesn't fit. I told myself I was just being careful, following protocol. But the truth is, I wouldn't have questioned a white man dressed the same way. I know that now. I've lost my job, my reputation, and my peace of mind. I deserve that, but more than anything, I'm sorry for how I made you feel that day. You deserved better. Everyone deserves better." Marcus set down the letter and stared out his office window. He hadn't expected this. He wasn't sure what to do with it. Patricia's apology felt more genuine than her press conference had been. But words were just words. What mattered was whether real change would happen. 3 weeks later, Marcus walked into a large conference room at a hotel in Chicago. The room was filled with people. Richard Thompson and his airline leadership team sat on one side of the table. On the other side were civil rights leaders, including representatives from the NAACP and the Urban League. There were diversity consultants who specialized in corporate training, and there were 3 passengers who had experienced discrimination, including a black woman named Angela Harris, who had been kicked off a flight 2 years earlier. Marcus took his seat at the head of the table. "Thank you all for coming," he said. "We're here because what happened to me at Gate 47 was not unique. It was not rare. It happens every day to travelers across this country. Today we're going to talk about how to fix that." For the next 6 hours, the group discussed policies, training programs, and accountability measures. Richard Thompson listened carefully, taking notes. His team asked questions. They didn't make excuses. They admitted where they had failed. Angela Harris shared her story. 2 years ago, she had been removed from a flight because another passenger said she felt threatened by Angela's presence. Angela had done nothing wrong. She was sitting quietly in her seat reading a book. But the other passenger was white and nervous, and the flight crew believed her without question. Angela was escorted off the plane in front of everyone. She was humiliated and traumatized. She filed a complaint with the airline, but nothing ever came of it. "I stopped flying for a year after that," Angela said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I was afraid it would happen again. I was afraid of being treated like a criminal just for existing. When I saw Mr. Wellington's video, I cried, because I knew exactly how he felt. And I was glad someone with his platform was speaking up." Richard Thompson looked Angela in the eye. "Ms. Harris, what happened to you was completely unacceptable. I'm sorry we failed you. I'm sorry we didn't take your complaint seriously. You deserved better." "Sorry isn't enough," Angela said firmly. "I need to know that other people won't go through what I went through. I need to know you're actually going to change things." "That's why we're here," Richard said. "Tell me what changes you want to see." The group spent the rest of the day developing a comprehensive plan. The airline agreed to implement mandatory bias training for all employees, from baggage handlers to executives. Not just a one-time training, but ongoing education. They agreed to revise their complaint procedures so that discrimination complaints went directly to a special team, not to local supervisors who might ignore them. We failed those passengers, and now it's public knowledge. So we admit fault? Amanda asked. We admit fault, Richard confirmed. And we announce real changes, not just empty promises, real concrete steps. The airline released a statement that afternoon. They acknowledged that they had failed to properly handle previous complaints. They announced that Patricia Hendricks had been terminated, not just suspended. They promised a complete review of their discrimination policies. They committed to bringing in outside experts to train all staff. They pledged to create a passenger advocacy board to review future complaints. But the damage was already done. The airline's stock continued to fall. Customers posted messages saying they would never fly with the airline again. Flight attendants' unions spoke out, some defending Patricia and others condemning her. It became a national conversation about bias in travel. Marcus returned to his hotel and opened his laptop. His email was flooded with messages of support. Civil rights leaders wanted to work with him. Other travelers who had experienced discrimination wanted to share their stories. Companies wanted to partner with his new foundation, but there were also negative messages. Some people accused him of being too sensitive. Others said he was just looking for attention. A few sent racist messages full of slurs and threats. Marcus read them all. The negative ones hurt, but they also reminded him why this work was important. His phone rang. It was his mother. I saw your press conference, she said. You made me cry, baby. Good tears or bad tears? Marcus asked. Good tears, she replied. Proud tears. You're doing what needs to be done. Your grandmother would have been so proud. Marcus smiled. His grandmother had been part of the civil rights movement in the 1960s. She had marched and protested and fought for equality. She had been arrested twice for sitting at whites-only lunch counters. She had taught Marcus that sometimes you have to stand up and make noise to create change. I wish she was here to see this, Marcus said. Oh, baby, she's watching, his mother said. I know she is. After hanging up with his mother, Marcus opened his social media accounts. The response was overwhelming. Millions of people were sharing his story. Thousands were posting their own experiences with discrimination. The hashtag Fair Travel was trending worldwide. One post caught his attention. It was from a young black woman named Tasha Williams. She wrote, 5 years ago, I was kicked off a flight because the white passenger next to me said I made her uncomfortable. I tried to complain, but nobody listened. Thank you, Marcus Wellington, for using your voice when so many of us couldn't. Marcus read dozens of similar stories. A Latino man questioned by TSA for an hour for no reason. An Asian woman moved from first class because another passenger complained about sitting next to her. A Middle Eastern family removed from a plane because other passengers were scared. The stories went on and on. Marcus realized that his incident at Gate 47 was just one drop in an ocean of discrimination. He had the power to amplify these voices. He had the resources to help these people, and he had the determination to fight for change. He sent a message to his foundation team. Start collecting stories. Every person who has experienced discrimination while traveling. I want to document them all. I want people to see how widespread this problem really is. Then he sent another message to his lawyers. I want to meet with the airline CEO, but not alone. I want civil rights leaders there. I want diversity experts there. I want other passengers who have been discriminated against there. This conversation needs to be bigger than just me and him. Marcus looked out his hotel window at the London skyline. He was supposed to be here for a business meeting. He was supposed to review quarterly reports and discuss expansion plans. But all of that seemed less important now. This was bigger than business. This was about human dignity. 3 weeks after the incident at Gate 47, the airline's internal investigation was in full swing. A team of lawyers, human resources specialists, and external consultants were reviewing every aspect of Patricia Hendricks' employment history. What they found was disturbing. Patricia had worked for the airline for 12 years. In that time, 7 passengers had filed formal complaints against her. Not 3, as initially reported. 7. The airline had only publicly acknowledged 3 because those were the ones that made it into her official personnel file. The other 4 complaints had been handled at the local level and never reported to corporate headquarters. Margaret Chen led the investigation team. She was a former federal prosecutor who now worked as an independent consultant on discrimination cases. She sat in a conference room at airline headquarters reviewing file after file. "This is worse than we thought," she told Richard Thompson, the airline CEO. "These complaints show a clear pattern." She opened a folder and read from it. In 2019, a Nigerian businessman complained that Patricia questioned his ability to speak English even though he spoke perfectly. She made him repeat himself multiple times and called for a supervisor to verify his ticket. Margaret opened another folder. In 2021, a Puerto Rican family flying to visit relatives was moved to different seats because Patricia said they were too loud during boarding. Other passengers who witnessed it said the family was speaking at normal volume. Patricia just didn't like hearing Spanish? Why weren't these complaints taken more seriously? Richard asked, though he already knew the answer. Because the local supervisors didn't think they were important enough, Margaret said bluntly. They would talk to Patricia. She would say she was just following policy and they would let it go. Nobody wanted to deal with the paperwork or the potential conflict. Richard rubbed his temples. He had worked hard to build a culture of customer service at his airline. But clearly something had gone very wrong. What about the other flight attendants? Did anyone ever speak up about Patricia's behavior? Margaret pulled out another file. Actually, yes. 2 flight attendants who worked with Patricia regularly submitted reports to their supervisors. They said Patricia treated passengers of color differently. She questioned their tickets more often. She watched them more closely. She was quicker to call security if there was any issue. And what happened to those reports? Richard asked, though he suspected he knew. Nothing, Margaret said. The supervisors filed them away. No action was taken. The flight attendants who reported the behavior said they eventually stopped reporting because they felt like nobody was listening. This was exactly what Richard had feared. The problem wasn't just Patricia Hendricks. The problem was a system that allowed her behavior to continue unchecked for over a decade. The problem was supervisors who didn't want to deal with difficult conversations. The problem was a culture that valued avoiding conflict over protecting passengers. Margaret closed the files. "Mr. Thompson, I need to tell you something. Patricia Hendricks is not the only employee with multiple discrimination complaints. We found at least 15 other employees across different airports with similar patterns." Richard felt sick. 15? At least, Margaret confirmed. And those are just the formal complaints that were filed. How many incidents happened where passengers didn't bother to complain because they didn't think it would matter? It was a good question, one that Richard couldn't answer. He thought about Marcus Wellington's press conference. Marcus had said that his incident wasn't unique. Now Richard understood just how right Marcus had been. While the internal investigation continued, Patricia Hendricks hired a lawyer. His name was Donald Barrett, and he specialized in employment law. He scheduled a press conference to tell Patricia's side of the story. Patricia sat next to her lawyer in front of a small group of reporters. She had lost weight since the incident. Her eyes looked tired. She wore a conservative blue dress and minimal makeup. She looked like someone who had been through a difficult time. Donald spoke first. "My client, Patricia Hendricks, has been unfairly vilified in the media. She is not a racist. She is a dedicated employee who was simply doing her job according to airline policy. She has been made a scapegoat for larger problems within the airline industry." A reporter raised her hand. "What about the previous complaints filed against Ms. Hendricks?" "Those complaints were investigated and found to have no merit," Donald said smoothly. "Ms. Hendricks was cleared in every instance. The fact that they are being brought up now is a smear campaign designed to justify the airline's decision to terminate her employment." Patricia leaned toward the microphone. "I want to say that I'm very sorry that Mr. Wellington felt discriminated against. That was never my intention. I was trained to verify tickets when something seemed unusual. His casual appearance in first class seemed unusual to me. That's all it was. But other passengers were dressed casually and you didn't question their tickets," a reporter pointed out. "Why was Mr. Wellington different?" Patricia hesitated. "I don't remember exactly who else was boarding at that time. I was focused on my job." "Were any of those other casual passengers black?" the reporter pressed. Donald stepped in. "We're not here to play racial politics. My client made a judgment call based on her training and experience. She's being crucified because the passenger happened to be famous. If Mr. Wellington had been an unknown person, this wouldn't have made the news." Marcus looked up at her and saw genuine concern in her eyes. "Thank you," he said. I appreciate that. I'm fine, Gloria nodded. If you need anything at all, please let me know. She paused. For what it's worth, many of us have been trying to get the company to take discrimination complaints more seriously. Maybe now they'll listen. After Gloria walked away, Marcus thought about her words. This wasn't just about one flight attendant having a bad day. This was about a system that allowed discrimination to continue. A system that received complaints but didn't act on them. A system that protected the company but not the passengers. He pulled out a notebook from his bag and started writing. He wrote about his experience at the gate. He wrote about other times he had faced discrimination. He wrote about the countless other people who faced this every day without his resources or platform. He wrote about what needed to change. By the time the plane landed in London 6 hours later, Marcus had filled 20 pages. He had a clear vision of what he wanted to do next. This wasn't just about getting an apology from the airline. This was about creating real, lasting change. When the plane touched down, Marcus turned on his phone. It immediately exploded with notifications. Text messages, emails, missed calls, social media alerts. It went on and on. He scrolled through the messages quickly. His assistant needed to talk to him urgently. His lawyers wanted a meeting. The airline CEO wanted to speak with him. News organizations wanted interviews. Civil rights groups wanted his support. But the message that caught his attention was from his mother. It was simple and direct. I saw the video. I'm so proud of how you handled yourself. But baby, I'm tired of seeing my son treated this way. Do something about it. Love, Mom? Marcus smiled sadly. His mother had faced discrimination her whole life. She had worked as a nurse for 40 years, often being passed over for promotions given to less qualified white colleagues. She had taught Marcus to work twice as hard to get half as far. She had taught him to always be polite, always be professional, always keep his composure. He had followed her advice at the gate. He had stayed calm. He had been polite. He had kept his composure. And still he had been treated like a criminal. Marcus stood in his London hotel room looking at his laptop screen. The story had exploded overnight. Every major news outlet was covering it. The video of Patricia Hendricks questioning his ticket had been viewed over 50 million times. His name was trending worldwide on social media. He scrolled through the headlines. Billionaire CEO stopped from boarding plane. Airline faces backlash after racial profiling incident. Tech leader speaks out on travel discrimination. The story was everywhere. His phone rang. It was his assistant, Jennifer. Marcus, we need to talk about the media requests. I have over 200 interview requests. CNN, BBC, NBC, everyone wants to talk to you. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed.
How bad is it for the airline?
Their stock dropped 8% when the market opened this morning, Jennifer said. Social media is calling for boycotts. Civil rights organizations are demanding action. It's a full crisis for them. What about Patricia Hendricks? Marcus asked. She's been suspended, Jennifer replied. The airline released a statement saying they're investigating. But people aren't satisfied with that. They want to know why she still has a job. They want to know about her history. Marcus thought for a moment. Set up a press conference for this afternoon. Not in London. Set it up at the airport where it happened. I want to go back there, are you sure? Jennifer sounded worried. That might bring even more attention. That's the point, Marcus said firmly. This isn't going away. And I don't want it to go away. I want to use this moment to talk about something bigger than what happened to me. 6 hours later, Marcus stood at a podium in the same airport where he had been stopped. Behind him was Gate 47, the scene of the incident. In front of him were dozens of reporters with cameras and microphones. Airport officials had cleared the area for the press conference. Marcus wore a simple dark suit. He looked professional but not too formal. He wanted people to see him as both the billionaire CEO and the regular traveler who had been discriminated against. He stepped up to the microphone. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to make a brief statement and then I'll take a few questions. The crowd of reporters quieted down. Cameras flashed. Video cameras rolled. 2 days ago, I was prevented from boarding my flight at this gate, Marcus began. A flight attendant questioned my right to be in first class based on how I was dressed. She called security on me even though I had done nothing wrong. She treated me like a criminal because I didn't look the way she thought a wealthy person should look. Marcus paused and looked directly at the cameras. I want to be clear about something. This isn't really about me. Yes, what happened was wrong. Yes, I was humiliated and frustrated, but I'm a billionaire with resources and lawyers and a platform. I'll be fine. He leaned forward slightly. But what about everyone else? What about the countless Black travelers, Latino travelers, Asian travelers, and other people of color who face this kind of treatment every single day? What about the people who don't have millions of followers on social media? What about the people who can't afford lawyers? Who speaks for them? A reporter in the front row raised her hand, but Marcus wasn't finished. The airline has apologized to me personally. They've offered me compensation. They've suspended the flight attendant. But that's not enough. Because this isn't just about one person having a bad day. This is about a system that allows discrimination to happen over and over again. Marcus pulled out a piece of paper. I did some research. Patricia Hendricks, the flight attendant who stopped me, has had at least 3 previous complaints filed against her for similar behavior. 3 times passengers of color complained that she treated them unfairly. And 3 times the airline did almost nothing about it. A warning here, some retraining there, but she kept working. She kept discriminating. The reporters started talking among themselves. This was new information. This was a bigger story than they thought. So here's what I'm announcing today, Marcus said. I'm not accepting the airline's compensation. Instead, I'm asking them to donate that money to organizations that fight discrimination in travel. I'm also establishing the Fair Travel Foundation with a $10 million donation from my own pocket. This foundation will document cases of travel discrimination, provide legal support to victims, and push for industry-wide reforms. The reporters erupted with questions. Everyone was talking at once. Marcus pointed to a woman from CNN. Mr. Wellington, have you spoken with the airline CEO? She asked. Not yet, Marcus replied. He's tried to reach me, but I wanted to make this statement first. I don't want a private conversation where they make promises to me personally. I want public accountability. I want real change that helps everyone. What do you want to see happen to Patricia Hendricks? Asked a reporter from the Washington Post. Marcus chose his words carefully. I don't know Patricia Hendricks personally. I don't know her story or what's in her heart. But I know that someone who repeatedly discriminates against passengers shouldn't be in a position of power over those passengers. The airline needs to decide whether they value diversity and inclusion more than they value protecting problem employees. Some people are saying you're being too harsh, said a reporter. From a conservative news outlet, they say you're playing the race card. What do you say to that? Marcus looked at the reporter calmly. I would say that playing the race card is what people often say when they don't want to acknowledge that racism still exists. I was stopped and questioned for no reason other than how I looked. That's not playing a card. That's stating a fact. And if that makes some people uncomfortable, maybe they need to ask themselves why the truth makes them uncomfortable. The reporter sat down looking embarrassed. Other reporters continued asking questions. Marcus answered them all honestly and directly. He didn't get angry. He didn't raise his voice. He was calm and clear and determined. After 30 minutes, Marcus wrapped up the press conference. I want to end by saying this. I could have stayed quiet about what happened. I could have taken the airline's money and moved on. But I have a responsibility to use my platform for good. Too many people suffer in silence. Too many people feel powerless. I want them to know they're not alone. And I want the companies that allow discrimination to know that we won't stay silent anymore. As Marcus walked away from the podium, reporters shouted more questions, but he was done talking for now. He had said what he needed to say. Now it was time to see what happened next. Within hours, Marcus's press conference was being shown on every news channel. His pledge to donate $10 million made headlines. His criticism of the airline's handling of previous complaints became a major story. His call for industry-wide change sparked conversations across the country. The airline's CEO, Richard Thompson, watched the press conference from his office in Atlanta. His face grew darker with each word Marcus spoke. After it ended, he turned to his leadership team. We need to respond to this today. What do you want to say? Asked Amanda Walsh, his PR director. Everything he said was true, Richard admitted. We did receive complaints about Patricia Hendricks. We didn't take them seriously enough. At the end of the video, he said, This happened to me today because I'm a black man who didn't look the way someone thought a first-class passenger should look. How many other people experience this every single day? How many don't have the platform to speak up? It's time we talk about this. It's time for change. He posted the video to his social media accounts where he had millions of followers. Then he turned off his phone and stared out the window. The plane was filling up with passengers. Soon they would take off. He would fly to London, attend his meeting, and then fly home. But Marcus knew that nothing would be quite the same after this day. Something had shifted. A line had been crossed, and he was done staying silent. The security officers stood near Gate 47 filling out their incident reports. The gray-haired officer, whose name was Tom Bradley, wrote down the details of what had happened. He had been working airport security for 15 years. He had seen all kinds of situations, but something about this one bothered him. Tom looked at his notes again. Marcus Wellington. The name seemed familiar. He pulled out his phone and typed the name into a search engine. What came up on his screen made his stomach drop. Marcus Wellington was not just some random passenger. He was the founder and CEO of Wellington Technologies, one of the biggest tech companies in the world. His net worth was estimated at over $3 billion. He had been on the cover of Forbes magazine just last month. He had given a speech at the United Nations. He donated millions to charity every year. Tom showed his phone to his partner, Lisa. "Look at this," he said quietly. Lisa's eyes went wide. "Oh no, that's the guy Patricia stopped from boarding?" "That's him," Tom confirmed. He looked toward the plane, which was now fully boarded and preparing to depart. "We need to tell someone about this. This is going to be big news." Tom radioed his supervisor, Captain David Morrison. "Cap, we need you at Gate 47. It's urgent." Within minutes, Captain Morrison arrived. He was a serious man in his 50s who had managed airport security for 2 decades. "What's going on?" he asked. Tom explained the situation. As he talked, he showed Morrison the search results on his phone. Morrison's face grew darker with each word. "You're telling me that Patricia Hendricks refused to let Marcus Wellington board because she thought he looked suspicious?" "That's exactly what happened," Tom said. "The guy was completely calm and polite. He had valid ID, a valid ticket, everything. She just didn't believe someone dressed like him could afford first class." Morrison ran his hand over his face. "This is a nightmare. Has the plane left yet?" "It's about to," Lisa said, checking the gate display. "They closed the door 2 minutes ago." Morrison pulled out his phone and made a call. "This is Captain Morrison at Gate 47. I need to speak with the airport director immediately." "Yes, I know what time it is. This can't wait." While Morrison talked on the phone, passengers who had witnessed the incident were sharing their videos on social media. One woman named Jennifer Brooks had recorded the entire confrontation. She posted it on her profile with the caption, "Just watched a flight attendant racially profile a passenger at Gate 47. Absolutely disgusting." This man did nothing wrong. The video started spreading immediately. People shared it. News outlets picked it up. Within an hour, Marcus Wellington's name was trending on social media. People who had never heard of him before were learning his story. Business leaders who knew him were expressing their shock and support. At Wellington Technologies headquarters, the company's public relations team was in crisis mode. Marcus's assistant, Jennifer Park, had been trying to reach him since she saw the first video online. But Marcus had turned off his phone on the plane. Jennifer gathered the senior leadership team for an emergency meeting. "We need to prepare a statement," she told the group. "This is going viral. By the time Marcus lands in London, it's going to be international news." The company's chief operating officer, David Chen, Sarah's husband, looked grim. "My wife just texted me from the plane. She witnessed the whole thing. She says Marcus was incredibly calm, but the flight attendant was way out of line." "Do we know anything about this flight attendant?" asked Maria Rodriguez, the head of legal affairs. Jennifer pulled up information on her laptop. "Her name is Patricia Hendricks. She's been with the airline for 12 years. According to their website, she's a senior flight attendant." "Get me everything you can find on her," Maria said. "If Marcus decides to pursue legal action, we need to be prepared." Back at the airport, Captain Morrison was meeting with Airport Director Helen Crawford in her office. He explained what had happened at Gate 47. He showed her the videos that were already circulating online. He told her about Marcus Wellington's identity. Helen watched the videos with a mixture of horror and anger. "This is exactly the kind of incident we train our staff to avoid," she said. "How did this happen?" "Patricia Hendricks claims she was following protocol," Morrison said. "But from what I saw in the reports and heard from witnesses, This was clearly discriminatory. She questioned a black passenger's right to be in first class based on nothing but his appearance. Helen picked up her phone. "Get me the CEO of the airline on the line. Now." At airline headquarters in Atlanta, CEO Richard Thompson was just finishing a late dinner when his phone rang. His assistant's voice was urgent. "Sir, we have a serious situation. I'm sending you a video. You need to watch it immediately." Richard opened the video on his tablet. As he watched Patricia Hendricks question Marcus Wellington's ticket, refuse to let him board and call security, Richard felt his blood pressure rising. This was a public relations disaster. This was a legal nightmare. This was everything they had tried to prevent with their diversity training and customer service protocols. He called his executive team. "Everyone needs to be in the office in 1 hour. We have a major crisis on our hands." Within hours, the airline's corporate office was buzzing with activity. Lawyers reviewed policies. PR specialists drafted statements. Human resources pulled Patricia Hendricks's employment file. What they found was troubling. Patricia had 3 previous complaints filed against her by passengers. One complaint from 2 years ago involved a Hispanic family. Patricia had questioned whether they could afford their tickets. Another complaint from last year involved a Middle Eastern passenger. Patricia had called for extra security screening. A third complaint from 6 months ago involved an elderly black woman. Patricia had insisted the woman must be in the wrong seat. In each case, the complaints had been noted, but no serious action was taken. Patricia received brief retraining. She was given a warning, but she kept her job. She kept working. She kept treating certain passengers differently than others. Now it was all coming to light, and it was happening in the most public way possible. Richard Thompson made a decision. He called Helen Crawford, the airport director. "I want Patricia Hendricks suspended immediately. Pending a full investigation. She is not to work another flight until we sort this out." "Already done," Helen replied. "I suspended her 2 hours ago." "Good," Richard said. "Now I need to do damage control. Do we have any way to contact Marcus Wellington?"
His plane is in the air, Helen said.
"But I have his office contact information. His assistant says he'll call you when he lands." Richard hung up and turned to his PR team. "We need a statement ready before Wellington's plane lands. We need to acknowledge what happened. We need to apologize. And we need to announce concrete steps we're taking to address this." His PR director, Amanda Walsh, shook her head. "Sir, with all due respect, a statement isn't going to be enough. This video has been viewed millions of times already. People are furious. They're calling for boycotts. They want more than words, Ray." "Then what do you suggest?" Richard asked. "We need to show real change," Amanda said. "Not just fire Patricia Hendricks and move on. We need to review our entire training program. We need to look at how we handle complaints. We need to bring in outside experts. And we need Marcus Wellington's input on how to do better." Richard nodded slowly. "You're right. Set up a call with our diversity and inclusion team. I want a comprehensive plan by morning." On the plane, Marcus sat quietly in his seat. He had turned his phone off, so he had no idea what was happening on the ground. He didn't know his video had gone viral. He didn't know the airline CEO was in crisis mode. He didn't know that news organizations around the world were preparing stories about his experience. Sarah Chen sat a few rows behind him. She had kept her phone on airplane mode, but had written several emails to send once they landed. One was to the entire Wellington Technologies leadership team, explaining what she had witnessed. Another was to her personal lawyer, asking about discrimination laws. A third was to a friend who worked at a major newspaper, giving her the full story. Other passengers on the plane were also writing messages to send when they landed. Many had witnessed the gate confrontation. They had seen Marcus treated unfairly. They wanted to share what they had seen. The flight attendants working the flight had heard about the incident at the gate. The head flight attendant, a kind woman named Gloria Martinez, made a point to stop by Marcus's seat. "Mr. Wellington, I heard about what happened at the gate. On behalf of the crew, I want to apologize. That should never have happened. Is there anything we can do to make your flight more comfortable?" Marcus stood near the corner of Gate 47 with the 2 security officers. One of them, the tall gray-haired man, asked to see his boarding pass again. Marcus handed over his phone without protest. He had nothing to hide. His ticket was real. His identification was valid. He had done nothing wrong. The officer looked at the boarding pass carefully. Then he looked at Marcus's driver's license. He compared the names. Everything matched perfectly. "Mr. Wellington, your documents appear to be in order," the officer said. "Can you tell me what happened at the counter?" Marcus explained calmly.
"I presented my boarding pass to the gate agent."
She questioned whether it was really mine. She said my appearance didn't match what she expected from a first-class passenger. When I asked what she meant, she couldn't give me a clear answer. Then she called you. The second officer, a younger woman with short brown hair, wrote notes on a small pad. "Did you raise your voice or make any threats?" She asked. "No," Marcus said firmly. "I remained polite the entire time. You can ask the other passengers." Many of them were recording on their phones. The gray-haired officer nodded. "Wait here for just a moment, please." He walked over to Patricia, who was still at the gate counter. Marcus watched them talk. Patricia waved her hands as she spoke. She seemed upset and defensive. The officer listened, then shook his head. He pointed at his notepad and said something Marcus couldn't hear. While they talked, Marcus noticed a woman approaching from the boarding line. She was Asian, probably in her 40s, and wore a smart business suit. She looked familiar. As she got closer, Marcus recognized her. It was Sarah Chen, the chief financial officer of his own company. "Marcus?" Sarah said, her eyes wide with surprise and concern. "What's going on? Why are you standing here with security?" Marcus gave her a tired smile. "The gate agent thinks my ticket is fake, or that I somehow don't belong in first class. I'm not entirely sure which." Sarah's face went from confused to angry in seconds. "You're joking." "I wish I was," Marcus replied. Sarah turned toward Patricia at the counter. Her professional demeanor was gone, replaced by pure indignation. She marched over to the gate desk. Marcus and the security officers watched as Sarah confronted Patricia. "Excuse me," Sarah said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "I'm Sarah Chen, Chief Financial Officer of Wellington Technologies. The man you just called security on is Marcus Wellington, my boss and the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. What exactly is the problem here?" Patricia's confident expression faltered. I was just following protocol." His ticket seemed suspicious. "Suspicious how?" Sarah demanded. "Was it not valid? Was his name not on the ticket? Did his identification not match?" "Well, no, but," Patricia started. "But what?" Sarah pressed. "But he's wearing a hoodie? But he doesn't look like what you think a rich person should look like. Is that what you mean?" Other passengers at the gate had stopped what they were doing. Everyone was watching now. Some continued recording on their phones. The situation was attracting more attention by the second. Patricia's face turned bright red. "Ma'am, I don't appreciate your tone. I was simply doing my job. We have to be careful about fraudulent tickets. Have you questioned anyone else's ticket today?" Sarah asked. "That man in the jeans and t-shirt? That woman in the sweatpants? Or just the black man in casual clothes?" The question hung in the air like a bomb about to explode. Patricia opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked around desperately, as if searching for help. The gray-haired security officer returned to Marcus. He looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Wellington, I apologize for the confusion. Your documents are clearly valid. You're free to board your flight." He turned to his partner. "Lisa, we're done here." This was a misunderstanding. The younger officer nodded and put away her notepad. But before they could leave, Patricia spoke up again. "Wait, I still need to verify this with my supervisor." "I have the right to refuse boarding to any passenger I feel might cause a disturbance." Marcus felt his patience running thin. He had been calm and cooperative. He had shown every piece of identification requested. He had done nothing to cause any disturbance. The only person causing problems was Patricia herself. "A disturbance?" Marcus said quietly. His voice was controlled, but there was steel underneath. "I presented my ticket. I showed my ID. I answered every question politely. The only disturbance here is you preventing a paying customer from boarding a flight, because you've made assumptions based on how I look." More passengers gathered around. An elderly white couple stood near the window, shaking their heads in disapproval at Patricia. A young man with a backpack filmed everything on his phone. A woman with 2 small children tried to explain to them what was happening. "I think we should call the airline supervisor," the gray-haired officer said. He pulled out his radio. "This has gone beyond a simple ticket check." Within minutes, a man in a dark suit rushed to the gate. His name tag identified him as Robert Martinez, customer service manager. He looked flustered and worried. "What's the situation here?" he asked. Everyone started talking at once. Patricia tried to explain her side. Sarah defended Marcus loudly. The security officers gave their assessment. Passengers called out comments from the crowd. It was chaos. Robert held up his hands. Please everyone, one at a time. He looked at Marcus. Sir, I'm very sorry for any inconvenience. Can you tell me what happened? Marcus took a deep breath. He was tired of explaining, but he did it again. He kept his voice even and factual. He stated only what happened, not how he felt about it. When he finished, he pulled out his phone. I recorded part of the interaction. Would you like to see it? Robert looked nervous. That won't be necessary, sir. I believe you. He turned to Patricia. Did you question this passenger's ticket? Yes, but I had good reason, Patricia began. Did his identification match the ticket? Robert interrupted. Yes, but did he threaten you or behave inappropriately in any way? Patricia hesitated. No, but he didn't look like Robert said firmly. He closed his eyes for a moment as if gathering patience. When he opened them, he looked directly at Patricia. You need to step away from this gate immediately. I'll handle this situation. Patricia's mouth dropped open. But I was just doing my job. We'll discuss this later, Robert said in a tone that meant the discussion was over. Please go to the back office now. Patricia looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Robert's expression stopped her. She grabbed her tablet and walked away quickly, her heels clicking loudly on the floor. Many passengers watched her go with satisfaction in their eyes. Robert turned to Marcus with an apologetic expression. Mr. Wellington, on behalf of the airline, I sincerely apologize for this incident. This should never have happened. We would like to offer you an upgrade to our premium first-class suite and a full refund of your ticket price. Marcus shook his head. I don't want an upgrade. I don't want a refund. I want to board the plane I paid for and get to my meeting in London. That's all I ever wanted. Of course, Robert said quickly. He personally scanned Marcus's boarding pass. You're all set. Please board whenever you're ready. Again, I'm so sorry for this experience. Sarah walked with Marcus toward the jet bridge. Are you okay? She asked quietly. I'm fine, Marcus said, though he wasn't sure that was true. He felt tired and frustrated and angry all at once. Thank you for speaking up. Of course, Sarah said. That was completely unacceptable. Are you going to report this? Marcus paused at the entrance to the jet bridge. He looked back at the gate area. At least 20 passengers still stood there, talking about what they had witnessed. Many of them were still holding up their phones. The videos were probably already being uploaded to social media. I don't need to report it, Marcus said slowly. It's already being reported by everyone with a camera. By tomorrow morning, this will be everywhere. Sarah nodded. What are you going to do? Marcus thought about all the times he had let things like this slide. All the times he had been patient and understanding. All the times he had told himself it wasn't worth making a fuss. He was tired of being patient. He was tired of letting it slide. I'm going to make sure this means something, he said finally. This doesn't just happen to me. It happens to people every day. People who don't have the resources I have. People who don't have witnesses and video evidence. I'm going to use what happened here to make a change. Sarah smiled grimly. Good. You know I'll support you however I can. They boarded the plane together. As Marcus walked down the aisle toward his seat, other passengers looked at him with a mixture of sympathy and curiosity. Some nodded at him supportively. One man reached out and patted his shoulder as he passed. That was wrong what she did to you, the man said quietly. Glad you stood your ground. Marcus found his seat in row 2. He stored his bag in the overhead bin and sat down by the window. He pulled out his phone and saw dozens of text messages and missed calls. News was already spreading. His assistant had sent several urgent messages. His public relations team wanted to know what statement to prepare. His lawyers needed to talk to him. But before he dealt with any of that, Marcus opened his camera app. He recorded a short video. In it, he calmly explained what had happened at the gate. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't curse or make threats. He simply told the truth. Marcus Wellington walked through the busy airport with his small carry-on bag. He wore simple jeans, a gray hoodie, and comfortable sneakers. His headphones hung around his neck. To anyone watching, he looked like a regular traveler heading home from a weekend trip. Nobody would guess that he was worth over $3 billion. Marcus had built his technology company from nothing. He started in a small apartment 15 years ago with just a laptop and a dream. Now his company employed over 10,000 people across 20 countries. His face had been on magazine covers. He had met presidents and prime ministers. But Marcus never forgot where he came from. He still preferred comfort over fancy clothes. He still carried his own bags. He still waited in lines like everyone else. Today he was flying to London for an important business meeting. He had bought a first-class ticket because the flight was long, and he needed to work during the journey. His assistant had sent him the boarding pass on his phone that morning. Everything was ready. He just needed to get to Gate 47 and board the plane. The airport was crowded with travelers. Families rushed past with crying children. Business people talked loudly on their phones. Tourists took photos near the large windows. Marcus moved through the crowd easily. He had traveled this route many times before. He knew exactly where to go. When he reached Gate 47, he saw a long line of passengers waiting to board. A sign above the desk said the flight would begin boarding in 10 minutes. Marcus checked his phone. His boarding pass showed Group 1, which meant he could board first. He walked toward the gate agent's desk. A woman in a crisp airline uniform stood behind the counter. Her name tag read, Patricia Hendricks, Senior Flight Attendant. She had blonde hair pulled back tightly and wore bright red lipstick. She was checking boarding passes and directing passengers to wait in different areas. Marcus joined the small group of first-class passengers near the front of the line. There were about 8 other people waiting. Most of them wore business suits or expensive-looking casual clothes. One man had a designer leather jacket. A woman carried a purse that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Patricia looked up from her computer screen and smiled at the group. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll begin boarding first-class passengers in just a few moments. Please have your boarding passes ready. Marcus pulled out his phone and opened his boarding pass. The screen showed his name, seat number 2A, and the word first class in bold letters. He stood quietly, waiting his turn. After a few minutes, Patricia made an announcement. We will now begin boarding Flight 892 to London. First class and priority passengers may board at this time. The line moved forward. One by one, Patricia scanned boarding passes and welcomed passengers aboard. She smiled warmly at each person. Welcome aboard, Mr. Johnson. Have a wonderful flight, Mrs. Chen. Enjoy your trip, sir. Marcus stepped up to the counter when his turn came. He held out his phone with the boarding pass displayed clearly on the screen. Good afternoon, he said politely. Patricia glanced at his phone, then looked up at him. Her smile disappeared. She stared at Marcus for a long moment, her eyes moving from his hoodie to his sneakers and back to his face. Is this your boarding pass? She asked. Yes, it is, Marcus replied calmly. He had been traveling for years. He knew the routine. Patricia took the phone from his hand and looked at it more closely. She frowned. This says first class. That's right, Marcus said. Seat 2A, Patricia's frown deepened. She looked at Marcus again, studying him carefully. Sir, are you sure this is your ticket? This is a first-class boarding pass. Marcus felt a familiar, uncomfortable feeling in his chest. He had experienced this before, though not usually at airports. Yes, I'm sure. That's my ticket. Patricia shook her head slowly. I'm sorry, but I need to verify this. This doesn't seem right. She turned to her computer and started typing. Behind Marcus, the other passengers began to shift uncomfortably. Someone coughed. Another person checked their watch. The line was not moving. Is there a problem? Marcus asked, keeping his voice steady and polite. Sir, I just need to check something, Patricia said without looking up from her computer. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. What's your name? Marcus Wellington. Patricia typed the name into her system. She stared at the screen for several seconds. Then she looked back at Marcus with suspicion in her eyes. And you purchased this ticket yourself? My assistant purchased it for me, yes, Marcus explained. Is there an issue with the booking? Sir, I'm going to need to see some additional identification, Patricia said firmly. This is a very expensive ticket. I need to make sure everything is in order. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He handed Patricia his driver's license. She took it and compared the photo to his face. She looked back and forth several times as if she couldn't believe they matched. Is there a problem, Patricia? Asked an older man in line behind Marcus. He wore an expensive suit and carried a leather briefcase. His tone was impatient. Just one moment, sir, Patricia called back. She was still holding Marcus's license and staring at her computer screen. Marcus watched her carefully. He could see the doubt in her eyes. He had seen that look before, in restaurants when he ordered expensive wine, in stores when he looked at jewelry, in hotels when he checked into luxury suites. It was the look of someone who didn't believe he belonged. "Ma'am, I've been flying with this airline for 10 years, Marcus said quietly. "I'm a platinum member of your rewards program. My ticket is valid. I'd like to board now, please." Patricia set down his license and crossed her arms. "Sir, I understand you're eager to board, but I have to follow our procedures. Something about this doesn't add up. Your appearance doesn't match the typical profile of our first-class passengers." The words hung in the air like a dark cloud. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Other passengers were definitely listening now. He could feel their eyes on his back. "My appearance?" Marcus repeated slowly. Patricia seemed to realize what she had said. She tried to backtrack. "I just mean that you're dressed very casually. Most of our first-class passengers dress more appropriately for the cabin." Marcus looked down at his clothes, then back at Patricia. He pointed to a man 3 people behind him in line. "That gentleman is wearing jeans and a t-shirt. Is his ticket being questioned?" Patricia's face turned red. "That's different. Sir, I'm going to need you to step aside. I need to call my supervisor." "I'm not stepping aside," Marcus said calmly but firmly. "My ticket is valid. My identification matches. I have a right to board this plane." The tension at the gate was rising. More passengers had gathered to watch what was happening. Several people had their phones out. Marcus noticed at least 3 people recording the interaction. Patricia picked up the phone at her desk. She spoke quietly into it, but Marcus could hear some of her words. "Security. Suspicious passenger?" Refusing to cooperate. Marcus felt a cold anger building inside him, but he kept his face calm. He had learned long ago that showing anger in situations like this only made things worse. He took a deep breath and waited. Within 2 minutes, 2 airport security officers appeared at the gate. They wore dark uniforms and serious expressions. Patricia pointed at Marcus. "That's him," she said. "He's trying to board with a first-class ticket, but I have concerns about whether it's legitimate." One of the security officers, a tall man with gray hair, approached Marcus. "Sir, can you come with us, please? We need to sort this out." Marcus looked at the officer, then at Patricia, then at the crowd of passengers watching with wide eyes. He knew this moment would define what happened next. He could cause a scene, or he could stay calm and let the truth speak for itself. He chose calm. "Of course, officer. But I want everyone here to know that my ticket is completely legitimate. I am being prevented from boarding because of how I look, not because of anything I've done wrong." The officer nodded. "Let's just step over here and talk, sir." As Marcus moved away from the boarding gate, he saw Patricia wave the next passenger forward with a bright smile. The line continued moving. People boarded the plane. Life went on as if nothing unusual had happened. But Marcus knew something important had just begun. He pulled out his phone and sent a quick text to his lawyer. Then he prepared himself for whatever came next. He had faced discrimination before, but never like this. Never so publicly, never so clearly, and this time he thought things were going to be different.